encara serem més, i que veniu doncs també a disposar doncs tota la gent de l'Alta, de la Torell, de SEA, de la cursa de la SEA León Eurocup, que això serà a les 12 del migdia. Ara són 2:15, per tant falta una hora i mitja, però que mica en mica doncs van arribant moltíssims aficionats, molta gent doncs del món de l'automobilisme, i que doncs us veurem segur a l'hora de la sortida de la cursa de la SEA León Eurocup, doncs això als voltants de per allà 3:15, aquí a la tribuna principal, on doncs farem alguna fotografia de record per la vostra estada aquí en aquest recinte, i que doncs si la teva doncs la gent del SEA, que tal, doncs va que siguin molt benvinguts. Això és casa vostra, circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. Tot a punt i preparat, preparado para esa primera de las carreras radical European Master. En la jornada de ayer pues, realizaron 2 competiciones, más o menos también con los mismos ganadores. Hay un líder de este campeonato que es Tristan Vidas, número 33, piloto de Estonia, y que ganó la primera carrera ayer, ganó también la última jornada de ayer, pues ya que 2 más, la tercera y la cuarta, va a partir pues desde la segunda posición de la parrilla de salida con el número 33, la pole tenemos el número 91 de Bradley Smith, un Bradley Smith, el británico, que terminaba en la segunda posición en las 2 carreras de ayer. Todos dando los mismos resultados. Tristan Vidas primero, Bradley Smith segundo. En la primera carrera, el número 21 de Chris Heyman y Alex Martin terminaba en la tercera posición. No sé decir, la prueba casi de resistencia, una prueba de 50 minutos, y que están los equipos formados por 2 pilotos o por un piloto. Son 2 pilotos, todos presentes en la parada obligatoria de boxes.
Yeah, he is. It's just for some. I think because Andy's had more than one. Bradley couldn't make one of the rounds this year. Had to drive on his own. They haven't put him in. But yeah, it's Bradley and Andy.
Hi there.
To a sunny Sunday morning here at the circuit, Barcelona, Catalunya, for the 3rd leg of the quadruple header this weekend, which is going to decide the Radical European Masters Championship. And we have got 50 minutes of action and entertainment to look forward to. Talking us through the action this morning, it's myself, Ben Evans. Alongside me is Will Brown from Radical Sports Cars. And Will, the championship could not be closer, because in the Masters class, Tristan Vidas and Bradley Smith, once we factor in the points for pole positions, are tied.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the greatest tradition of Radical Championship finales, yeah, indeed, we're going to the final day with an identical standing at the top of the points. So Tristan and Bradley both on 178 points, if you count in Bradley's pole position places from today, in today's race and later on as well. And the fight in the Supersport class is also pretty close, and of course they draw their championship to a close in this race, one race earlier, and there's only 20 points covering the top 4 races.
So here is how they line up in full then, with Bradley Smith and Tristan Vidas on the front row. Then it's Konstantin Kalko and Chris Hyman, Marco Cenchetti and Christian Kronengaard row 3. Then Tony Wells and Manhal Alos, John Harrison and Alain Costa, Terence Woodward and Ozzy Youssef. Most recently seen in the British GT Championship in a GT4 Evora. Andrew Ferguson, Jan Bartels in row 7, ahead of Bradley Ellis at the 4 of the Supersport class, and Henk Toys, then Tony Fournet, then Rustam Akinyaizov, then John Gandar and Shaheen Nouri, James Abbott, Roger Bromley, Roger Green, and Brian Caldwell. Big grid of cars, and it's completed by Alex Capadia, who starts at the very back, having not set a time in qualifying yesterday. So a little bit of explanation required, because for the purposes of one day only, you have to imagine that actually we're not in Barcelona, we're in Spa, because these are the 2 races today that were intended to be run at Spa in September. As you'll remember, for a variety of reasons, it was decided not to restart the first race on the Saturday, and that the Sunday race was run for the Supersport SR3s only. So what that means today is that everybody is out in this first race, and then the second race this afternoon is going to be for the SR8s only. So in turn, that will determine is at the checkered flag in 50 minutes' time, we will have a Supersport champion. The Masters Championship fight is almost certainly going to go through to the last race. In fact, I think the only way it couldn't, Will, is if Tristan Vidas non-finishes and Bradley Smith wins it and gets the fastest lap.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And I mean, given on the current status, if they both take a first and both take a second, then it's going to basically boil down to count back, and then Tristan will win the championship on the virtue of having scored more race wins than Bradley this year. Of course, Tristan had a fantastic start to the season and got on the pace very early and was really out the blocks and took a succession of race wins right back at the start of the year. But Bradley's learnt his SR8 very quickly, of course, a graduate from the SR3 Challenge and the Clubmans, in which he's been a champion in both races, in both championships. And it's taken him a few months just to get the balance and the setup of that SR8 as run by the family team exactly right. But now in the latter stages of the championship, he's been superbly quick and supremely consistent.
Well, if you've never seen a Radical European Masters race before, then thank you for your company. To explain, it is 50 minutes of action. There is a mandatory pit stop which comes at the halfway point of the race, and in order to keep costs at a sensible level, the pit opening is signalled by a board from the main flagging gantry, and the drivers must go past the pit lane open board on the track before they can come in and make their pit stop. The way that success is equalised through the season is through success, handicap time, additional pit stop time, and for yesterday, of course, you remember Bradley Smith had far more time in the pits than Tristan Vidas, which allowed Vidas to score the 2 victories. Well, today, for this first race, Tristan has got an additional 10 seconds in the pits in comparison to Bradley. So Bradley Smith, that is the white car, the red side pods and the black trim. Tristan Vidas, the silver and purple machine. And then on to the second row, we've got Konstantin Kauka, that is the all purpley pink number 5 car, the bright red number 21 machine of Chris Hyman. As the pace car peels off, we go through the final turn. We're about to go racing for the penultimate time of the season in the Radical European Masters, waiting for the lights to change, which they do now, and away we go, sprinting towards the first turn. It's a very good start from Bradley Smith, and Vidas looks to follow in behind him already. Marco Cencetti, unsurprisingly, jostling for position as Konstantin Kauka looks to try and assert the inside line. And contact Christian Kronegard is tagged by Terence Woodward. Around goes Kronegard. Woodward should rejoin. One or two of them, including Alan Costa, taking to the escape route. But with the exception of Kronegard, they're all cleanly through.
Yeah, it looks like Terence had a bit of a lock-up there, and Kronegard was the unfortunate victim of a bit of an innocent bystander in that accident.
So it's Smith from Vidas, Kauko, Hyman, Cencetti, and then Tony Wells. There's the orange and white car of John Harrison, who was one of the stars of yesterday's race in the Supersport class. Bradley Ellis, who is making the early running, and if he stays where he is, that should, and there is Ellis, give Andy Cummings the opportunity to come through and claim the Supersport crown. He leads the Supersport Championship coming into today by 6 points from Shaheen Nouri.
Yeah, and you see Ellis just moving out the way there for Alex Capadia, who's quite a long way out of position, having suffered a tyre infringement in Q1 yesterday. So he's battling his way back up the field, and Ellis has obviously recognised that earlier move over to let him pass.
Alex Capadia absolutely flying yesterday. He and co-pilot Tom Jordan finished in third place as John Harrison looks to the inside of Jaap Bartels. That was a gap that was always going to close. In fact, he did very well to get the car stopped. He was not to make contact with Bartels. Meanwhile, Marco Cencetti in 5th position, really applying the pressure to Chris Hyman. So here's our race leader, Bradley Smith. He flicks through the chicane at the end of the lap. So Vidas in 2nd place, Konstantin Kauko keeping him honest. Then we've got Chris Hyman and Marco Cencetti just along. The rest of the field all shuffling through the chicane, and Kauko, a good run here as they sprint down towards turn 1. He's not going to be quite close enough to challenge. Cencetti may fancy his chances to Hyman. Instead, it's Alex Capadia who's having an absolutely stellar first lap. As Jaap Bartels looked to the inside Manhalalos, that ended unsuccessfully. And now Bartels is under pressure from the black and white car with the fluorescent helmet of Alex Capadia. Meanwhile, there is our Supersport leader, Bradley Ellis, who is deciding to have a little bit of fun toying with James Abbott in one of the SR8s. Towards the hairpin, turn 4. And this, well, is exactly what Bradley Smith needs to do, a clean start to the race and breaking clear. But for me, Capalia was having an absolutely stellar opening couple of laps.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was tweeting before the race that the pairing with Tom Jordan, him and Todd had absolutely nothing to lose this weekend. And as we saw in testing yesterday, he's undoubtedly had the pace all weekend. He's been one of the fastest, if not the fastest guy on outright qualifying pace through the weekend. So yeah, they're really out to make. You see a replay there, and again, just the briefest of contact was enough to turn Chronogard round on the start.
There's nothing malicious about that at all. It was just a case of Terence Woodman maybe being caught out a little bit because it's been quite chilly this morning. Also, it's quite a steep downhill run into the first corner. Meanwhile, Alex Capalia, another passing manoeuvre, this time on Tony Wells. So that is for 6th position from 25th on the grid within 2 laps.
Yeah, quite frankly, incredible performance to get up and find so many places so quickly as we come round to complete the second lap.
So there is the 70 car of Henk Toys, who is just behind Alain Costa, disputing 12th and 13th position already. Capalia's bridged the gap up to Marco Ciancetti, and in terms of additional time in the pits, Capalia's looking an additional 15 seconds. Or he's not just looking an additional 5 seconds rather. So that could play out very nicely for Tom Jordan later on in the race if Alex can make the progress. But he's up behind Marco Ciancetti, and Ciancetti is a quick driver. Has been very productive this year with Marcello Maratotto. This weekend he is with Gabriel Rosa. Ciancetti, the black and blue car, just up behind bright red entry of Chris Hyman. And actually think about the move. And through he goes. Nice move that from Ciancetti. So Hyman may well lose 2 places in the blink of an eye here because Capalia is not to be deterred. He's looking to the inside into turn 9. Brave stuff. And again, though, that shows Chris Hyman's experience. He always drives for the race duration, not the glory of the first lap.
Yeah, Hyman, of course, a very, very experienced single-seater driver in Formula Palmer Audi and more recently in GT3 specification machinery, British GT and elsewhere as well. We'll just see a replay of that move again. Yes, Ciancetti had made the move nice and early, plenty of warning, and yeah, had got the car in a perfect position for the drive on the exit. And Capalia was able to follow him through.
So that is good enough then for 4th for Ciancetti and 5th for Capalia as Manhal Als tries to get to terms with Tony Wells. Then we've got Jaap Bartels, who is next along, John Harrison, the orange and white car, Alain Costa, and then James Abbott beginning to start to make some progress. And it's been a reasonably tough weekend for James. He was going very well in the first race yesterday and then got caught out in other people's incidents, lost his rear wing to damage the rear of the car, and that rather upset the balance there on him. But he's got the inside line here on Alain Costa and glides through, textbook manoeuvre.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And just looking back up to the lead at the moment, Tristan is just starting to drop away from Bradley Smith in the lead there. So there's a 3.8 second gap. He's going to really have to keep on the pace, and Bradley's already pulling out a succession of quick laps to extend his lead and give himself the best possible chance of taking this championship title.
And Bradley has set the fastest lap of the race thus far in its early stages. Here he is then, just using all of the aerodynamic grip to its absolutely maximum potential, and this is what Bradley has been doing time and time again this year. There is Tristan Vidas, who's shaken off the attentions of Constantine Calco. But again, what we've been seeing with is both drivers are having to play the long game this weekend. They know the result they need to get in each race, and they know that yesterday Vidas, with the slightly lower pit handicap time, meant he knew he had to convert those into 2 victories. This is a race that Bradley Smith knows that he must win, and then later on, if it finishes as they are currently in position, then that would mean they'll have identical pit handicap times, and we will get that wheel-to-wheel season finale we were hoping for.
Yeah, the gloves will really be off, and Bradley's also trying to make history in becoming the first radical driver to win 3 outright championships in successive years as well. So I know he wants that ground desperately, and to sort of make the radical record books, as it were. But yeah, as you say, if it finishes in this order, then there's going to be an identical pit stop time. It'll be a race in the pit stops, and yeah, it's going to be a fantastic battle, an SR8 battle in the final race.
think the fly in the ointment, though, in terms of the championship points here for Bradley Smith, is the progress and pace of Alex Capadia, who's now ahead of Marco Ciancetti. He's got some clear around him as Henk Toys looks to the inside of Alain Costa. And for the second lap in succession, Costa gets demoted. Meanwhile, Christian Kronengaard making progress, and that is Rustam Akinyazov, who has been spun around.
Yeah, it looks like Kronengaard was caught out there by the breaking point of Rustam, and just again a bit of an indication of the speed differential coming into many of the corners between the SR8s and the SR3s.
Although there is an argument that says that is karma, because Rustam did dispatch a couple of rivals in a similar fashion during the second race yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things, and what makes the European Masters such great preparation for longer distance enduro racing. You just see a replay of that incident again. Of course, with the speed differential, the differences between the SR3s and the SR8s is not dissimilar to the speed differentials you'd find between GT cars and LMPs and sort of the higher echelons of sports car racing. And it's great preparation, and a lot of these drivers then move on to racing in the European Le Mans Series this year, as they have done, and WEC as well.
So there is Terence Woodward. He's just ahead of John Harrison. That is the black and fluorescent orange car of James Abbott. James is making great progress up behind Harrison. He looks to the inside. There's not going to be much space there. They're coming towards the conclusion of their fifth lap of the race. So we're just coming up to around about 20% race distance. And Abbott surely is going to have the run here on John Harrison as they come out of the final turn along the start and finish straight. Field making a fantastic sight as they head down this almost kilometre long straight into the braking sequence of turns 1 and 2. And we were talking a lot yesterday about just how important getting the car set up right here is. Yeah,
that's right, because there's so many high speed. Of course, the Catalonia's famously used as a Formula 1 testing venue, and there's so many high speed, long sweeping radius corners here that getting your car balanced and the setup spot on is absolutely critical, because if you've got a car that's neutral and will keep the same balance front and rear, you can just hang on and hang on and hang on, and that's the key to a quick lap time around here. And what we might find as well is that the track conditions are quite different later in the day. As the track warms up here, some of the drivers have noticed that the grip level tends to drop off. So, yeah, it could be quite different come for the season finale later on.
Well, there is Chris Hyman, currently in 6th position. He's got Tony Wells just beginning to loom up onto his tail, and then Manhal Alos. And Alos had such a disappointing end to the second race yesterday afternoon because there was contact between he and Alex Mortimer, and then just as Manhal was recovering, it was into the path of Jesus Fuster. And although Manhal was classified, the rear suspension was somewhat out of alignment, and that ended his race pretty much on the spot. And so, unfortunately, for Jesus Fuster.
A great shame, really, because Manhal's pace all weekend has been very impressive, and he's been an extremely consistent racer through the weekend as well. And as generally speaking, has been very, very good, and some great close racing we saw yesterday, battling for sort of 5th, 6th, 7th position on the road. It was there was nothing you could put between the different drivers. So hopefully we'll see some more of that today.
So James Abbott again trying to challenge John Harrison along the start and finish straight. Abbott, who has also been racing in the British Formula Ford Championship this year, just can't quite get close enough to Harrison on the brakes towards turn 1 in the Supersport Championship battle, by the way. It is Bradley Ellis who is clear of Shaheen Nouri at the moment, and then 3rd in the class it's Tony Fournay, 4th is Roger Bromley, and 5th Brian Caldwell. And there is the differential between Bradley Ellis and Shaheen Nouri. They're currently split by the recovering Christian Kronengaard. Meanwhile, Tony Wells has had a little bit of a moment somewhere. He's been demoted by Manhal Alos, and Manhal wasn't that close to Tony last time we saw them, which would suggest that Tony may have possibly made a slight error off camera, because Alos is through. Now let's see whether or not Tony Wells can fight back, try and overhaul.
Yeah, and they could be a threat in the latter stages of the race, of course, as well, because following yesterday's retirement,
they are without success seconds.
Yes, that's right, and Littlejohn's also proven to be incredibly fast over any given lap here this weekend, so I wouldn't discount them for a podium at this stage either.
No, that will be worth watching later on. And also, what we can't do is lapse into this mindset that the top 2 places in all of these races are going to be locked up between Tristan Vidas and Bradley Smith, because with no success time for Tony Wells handing over to James Littlejohn and a good 30 seconds additional time in the pits for Tristan Vidas, then the way they are currently positioned, that gives it certainly gives James Littlejohn the sniff of a podium. Or rather, the sniff of something better than 3rd place.
Yeah,
podium.
ultimately, it's going to pan out depending on how much time these guys can grow in the run into the pit stops, which will take place in just over a quarter of an hour's time. Really, they need to make hay while the sun shines now, and probably grow a buffer of, certainly I would think 15 seconds gives.
So Tony Wells is currently 30 seconds adrift from Bradley Smith, but only 25 seconds adrift to Tristan Vidas, which, if it stays in that region, would give Littlejohn the opportunity to jump Vidas through the pit stops. And to be honest, if that happens, James Littlejohn would be probably the 2nd most popular person in the Smith family at close of play today. But there is still an awful lot of racing to go. We're only 14 minutes into the opening race of the day here in the Radical European Masters at the circuit to Barcelona, Catalunya. It is Bradley Smith who has led ever since the lights went out. Tristan Vidas is in 2nd position. Konstantin Kalko is 3rd, but is being caught very rapidly by Alex Kapadia in 4th. Marco Ciancetti is 5th. Chris Hyman's in 6th. And we are watching the fight for 10th place between John Harrison, who's continuing his fine weekend, and James Abbott, and the pair of them both just begin to move onto the tail of Terence Woodward.
Yeah, once again Abbott has a look, but he's just not quite close enough to break out of that slipstream and make the pass on John Harrison, who's driving solo this weekend. Normally drives with Richard True, who he has shared cars and drives with. Oh, that's Andrew Ferguson into the gravel.
He's not getting out of there in a hurry, and I hope that does not bring out anything like a safety car, because he's right at the periphery of the gravel trap. Couldn't quite get a sense of which corner that he had parked at. It's turn 7, we understand. So he's probably coming downhill.
As we continue to watch this battle for 10th position, and once again, James Abbott just not quite close enough to be able to make a pass into the first corner.
And as they start to get onto terms with Terence Woodward, there's a risk that they'll begin to get mesmerised by the car in front of them. It's something that's quite easy to do. You just, once you've caught the car in front of you behind them for several laps, you start actually doing exactly the same thing your rival's doing, and that makes it ever harder to overtake. We have got, not unsurprisingly, the first corner incident between Terence Woodward and Christian Kronegard under investigation, and it certainly appeared as if there was no malice, but at the same time it also appeared as if maybe Terence just missed his braking point, and that was what caused it. So there's the waved yellow flag. Where is Andrew Ferguson? That's a very unusual place to have gone off for Andrew Ferguson.
Yes, and the car appears to be facing the opposite direction at the circuit as well, so obviously he's had a big spin and a big moment there.
Well, the marshals know no fear. They are right at the edge of the circuit undertaking that recovery work, as across the line to complete his 9th lap comes Bradley Smith. And Bradley has still got the fastest lap of the race to his credit. 2nd place and now 7 seconds back is Tristan Vidas. Konstantin Kalko is only about 2.5 seconds clear now of Kapadia. And then Ciancetti in 5th. I think that the real gap to watch for here, looking towards the second half of the race, is where Vidas and Littlejohn, when he takes over from Tony Wells, are likely to feed back into proceedings, because James Littlejohn, as you were saying, Will, he's got the pace, as we saw early on yesterday, to run with Bradley Smith and Tristan Vidas.
Yeah, absolutely. Providing Bradley can maintain the pace that he's doing at the moment, he's currently running in the high 146s, some 0.8 of a second faster than Tristan. Then in the next couple of laps, he will have drawn out sufficient gap to emerge from the pits ahead of Vidas. But that is, of course, and as we've seen in the past, that's assuming that they don't have any problems in that pit stop window, and the car has to be. Oh, and there's a black flag there for
number 46 has been black flag. That's Andrew Ferguson.
So that's effectively a moot point. But
yes. I can only presume that the circumstances in which he arrived at that gravel trap have maybe provoke the ire of Brian Poulter, the race director, who would like to summon Andrew for a little chat. Well, as you were saying, Will, if Bradley does win the title today, it will be the most remarkable achievement, because, putting my cards on the table here, I think he is one of the most underrated British racing drivers at the moment. To achieve what he has done, to be essentially a complete novice, and 4 seasons later to have potentially won 3 titles, including a pan-European title, it is really absolutely immense, given the standard competition racing in the Radical SR3 Challenge in the UK and now the Radical European Masters.
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, if you follow his career through Radical competition, of course, he came into the Radical Clubman's Cup with the family-run MECTEC team as effectively they were new to kart racing, a very experienced karting racing team, and he's won many UK and European karting titles, but no prior car racing experience either by himself as a driver or the team in terms of preparation. But no, they had a sort of half season in the Clubman's Cup the first year, and then a full campaign which saw him battle season long with Matt Bell. And for anybody that witnessed that season, it was a really fascinating season. There really was nothing to split them, and essentially it came down to a standing start at Brands Hatch that year that ultimately determined the title, and Bradley's slightly quicker reactions off the line saw Matt slip in behind him, and then they were nose to tail for the rest of the race, and that really was the turning point in the season. But yeah, to do that and then to take the SR3 Challenge last year, which again was another incredibly hotly contested season, and yeah, then to move up to this year, and obviously he's had incredibly stiff competition in the form of VDAS right the way through the year, and it wasn't the easiest start to the year, and it took a couple of rounds for him to just get used to the different handling characteristics and the performance and the additional weight of the SR8. But no, he's obviously got that crack now, and all that time in the simulator has obviously paid off, and yeah, here we are standing on the verge of his 3rd Radical title. And of course, in the mix of that as well, he's gained some extra experience with his Sunoco prize drive last year, racing in the Daytona 24 Hours.
I think a driver with a big future ahead of him. So there is the 3rd place man, Konstantin Kauko, who is being caught by Alex Kapadia. So Kapadia is beginning to bring him in as the pit window is open, and the drivers, of course, have to drive past the pit open board, which is being displayed from the main signalling post on the start and finish straight. So what can we expect to see in terms of the pit stops? Well, I just wonder whether Bradley Smith and Tristan Vidas will just want to get their pit stops done and dusted nice and early, so they're out of the way. I think we can expect to see Alex Kapadia staying out reasonably late into the race.
Yeah, traditionally I say traditionally, through the season generally we've seen that the MECTEC team have elected to bring Bradley in early. Tristan's stops have been a little bit more random through, depending on how the team have felt. So yeah, I think almost certainly we'll see Bradley take an early stop and get that out of the way and get back through. That of course gives him the best chance as well of being able to find free space and maybe avoid some traffic in the middle of the latter parts of the race.
Exactly, because when you've got to have the pit stop and you're a single driver, there's a lot to be said. It's one more thing that could go wrong, and if you need the time to recover from it, then you might as well do the pit stop early, so at least you know where you are and you can get motoring thereafter. So we are on the 12th lap of the race, currently watching the 4th place car of Alex Kapadia, who will hand over to Tom Jordan. Konstantin Kauko, his rival ahead of him. It's Jesus Fuster who'll be taking over from him. Not quite sure how that livery got past the various scrutineers on Konstantin Kauko's car as they sprint through and continue with Kapadia having reeled in to about a second adrift from Kauko. He struggled thereafter to make progress. That is Vidas lapping Rustam Akinyazov, who has got himself back under power after his little spin, but he is down in 24th or 25th position at the moment. Unfortunately, the Russian 24th place is closing up onto Roger Green in the 71 car at present. Tristan Vidas in and amongst the traffic as we've got our first pit stopper, and it is Chris Hyman's hand over to Alex Mortimer. Again, no surprises there. Former British GT champion Mortimer also in his Tony Wells to hand over to James Littlejohn, the battle-scarred car of Terence Woodward, to pass on to Ross Kaiser. Plenty of driver changes underway as Woodward hops out. And again, Ross Kaiser has got no additional hit handicap time here. Could feature for a podium, which would be great to see.
Yeah, and that 88 car hasn't had. They've not had the best of luck this season. Terence and Ross, of course, former UK Cup champions and indeed European Radical champions as well. And they've had a challenging season, to say the least. But no, it'd be great to see them take a podium this weekend if everything comes together for Ross in the last stage of the race.
So into the pit lane then comes Bradley Smith and Tristan Vidas. So Bradley Smith and Tristan Vidas both into the pits to get the stop out of the way nice and early. That's going to promote then Konstantin Kalko to lead of the race. A little bit of a check of tyre pressures from the MechTech team. Vidas comes to a halt just behind him in the Speed Factory racing car.
What a fantastic shot there, yeah, absolutely. So we see both teams in action. Of course, as a solo driver, they can remain in the car, engine off, and then restart before the...
Meanwhile, we've got a challenge for the lead because Roger Green has been caught right in the middle of Konstantin Kalko and Alex Kapadia. Kalko goes to the outside, Kapadia to the inside, and Alex Kapadia should snatch the advantage from Kalko. And that really did have shades of Schumacher and Hakkinen going either side of Ricardo Zonta at Spa in 2000, as they are then getting onto terms with Alex Mortimer, who's just emerged from the pits. So they're in the thick of the traffic, and Kalko, I don't think, is overly amused by that, immediately trying to get himself back onto terms with Alex Kapadia as they sprint downhill. And also at the front of that shot, now that was really key, Will, James Littlejohn has emerged from his pit stop ahead of Alex Mortimer.
Yeah, absolutely. So two very, very closely matched drivers, as you said just a minute ago. Alex, of course, a former British GT champion and an FIA GT3 race winner. Although he he's going to shut the door there on Kapadia, but this could be a thrilling couple of laps as Kapadia battles before he goes for his pit stop as well. Yeah,
you wonder whether or not the Slim Racing team might just elect to get on the radio and bring Kapadia in, because I don't think Alex Mortimer's going to give him the pleasure of being overtaken by him, and therefore, as Mortimer gets himself and the car just back up to full race speed, Kapadia won't be able to run it quite at the pace he would want, but they're certainly going to give it a go for another lap. There is Littlejohn just in front of them, so of those that have made their pit stops, Bradley Smith has emerged and has emerged somewhere of the queue. Now, where is Tristan Vidas? I think Vidas is out of the pits ahead of James Littlejohn. Able to just pick up the gap at the end of this lap for you, just over half race distance. And this could be really quite interesting because we're going to have both James Littlejohn and Alex Mortimer trying to reel in Tristan Vidas and Bradley Smith.
Yes, and Kalko, I said the Kalko Fuster car, of course, is going to be in the melee there as well. Even if not necessarily for outright contention for a podium, it's certainly going to be in the mix in track position, which will make things all the more difficult when the lead title protagonists are trying to fight their way back through. They, of course, had a DNF in yesterday's race, so yeah, this is going to be very interesting.
I think Alex Mortimer's enjoying himself here. No love lost between him and Alex Kapadia, and Kapadia finally is able to make the passing manoeuvre stick.
Bit of a brave flymo moment there.
And that was to put a lap on Alex Mortimer. But Mortimer would say, well, I'm racing cars that I can't see, and Kapadia has to make his pit stop, so therefore it's not genuine lappery. Alex Kapadia would have a slightly different interpretation of events. Now, what is interesting here is I think Tony Wells did not have the greatest of in-laps to hand over to James Littlejohn, or that they had a poor pit stop, because Ross Kaiser has emerged from the pits ahead of Littlejohn. And more importantly, they've emerged from the pits about 15 seconds behind Tristan Vidas.
Yes, although our time screens have just updated, but yeah, there's a good 3-second gap.
As into the pit lane comes Konstantin Kalko. So we're waiting. Yes, so Vidas is 14 seconds ahead of Ross Kaiser. Kaiser has got James Littlejohn tucked just in behind him in the number 2 car. And in turn, they're a good 15 seconds again behind Bradley Smith. So clearly something didn't go quite right for the Marks Electrical team in that pit stop. They're still in the hunt for a podium finish. But
just as we watch Kalko there handing over to Fuster again, another very clean pit stop there, going very well. So
but what we were expecting to see, which was Littlejohn maybe undercutting Vidas hasn't come to pass at all. So Bradley Smith is, by the time they've all had their pit stops, going to be the undisputed leader of the race once more as he puts a lap on Roger Bromley. And Roger has made his pit stop. They're just up behind Bradley Ellis as well, who is yet to make his pit stop, to hand over to Andy Cummings. And the way it currently stands, it's looking pretty good for Andy Cummings to be the Supersport champion. Jesus Fuster and Manhal Alos just waiting for a thumbs up to get on their way. The front runners, it's only really Alex Capedia who's yet to make his pit stop. No great surprise.
So as Ellis goes around to complete another lap, just watch a replay there of a slide by Brian Cordwell there. Brian, of course, making his European debut this weekend, having come up from the Radical Clubman's Cup and the SR1 Cup before that.
Well, out of the pits comes Jesus Fuster. Now, Jesus Fuster got the jump here. I suspect he might have done on Bradley Smith. Indeed, he does. So Jesus Fuster emerges in essentially what is the lead of the race. And also, it's possible that Gabriel Rosa has also benefited well from those pit stops. This is always the joy of the Radical European Masters, the way the race gets turned on its head with the pit stops during the mid-race phase. Jesus Fuster, though, has got already Bradley Smith up into his tail. Fuster might be getting the call, and I think he has got the call, that he's fighting for the lead of the race. The way he moves across, defends from Smith. And this is where Smith cannot afford to be impetuous. He's got plenty of time in his back pocket behind him. Nonetheless, he thinks about the brave move into turn 9. Doesn't quite work out, but he surely has got to think about a sensible passing manoeuvre into turn 10. There's Gabriel Rosa just in behind as Smith to the outside of Jesus Fuster.
Yeah, he's had to make a fairly brave move there to stay out wide, and yeah, that obviously wasn't a comfortable line for Bradley, you could see, but he's realised he needs to make the pass early to give himself the best chance of getting a good gap from Vidas, but also staying out of any trouble as Jesus, who's a slightly less experienced or a slightly slower driver, and certainly on track pace, could potentially make a mistake, and he certainly doesn't want to be caught up in that.
And then it is Marco Cencetti. So is Cencetti doing the full race today? This first full race, because it's certainly Cencetti behind the wheel. Gabriel Rosa, who was nominated as our second driver, is emphatically not behind the wheel. It looks suspiciously like Marco Cencetti to me. And so Cencetti, and it certainly looks like it is he, has more than got the pace to hold off Tristan Vidas. So that could make it absolutely fascinating with an eye towards the championship.
Yes, we've just got notification that number 770 car Jean Gandar, the French SR8 racer, he'll be serving a stop-go penalty of 5 seconds. I guess that's for a short pit stop.
So to a halt, and out of the car is Alex Capedia. And again, Tom Jordan's going to feed out into the train, very well positioned, leaving it until the very back end of the pit window to come in. Alex Capedia, and why not? So there is Jesus Fuster. Now, relative to the track position, Bradley Smith is up ahead. This is the battle essentially for second place as Cencetti thinks about looking to the inside of Fuster. I think it's very unlikely that Cencetti would win the race, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility, is it? If he can find a way past Fuster and try to reel in Bradley Smith.
No, and it'll be interesting to see if Tom Jordan can come out and more or less trade times and places with Fuster. Then this is going to make things very, very difficult for Vidas.
So through the final turn, we have got the word. So here comes Tom Jordan, and Tom Jordan comes out in the lead of the race. So here's the order for you. It's Tom Jordan for, I suspect, 2 more corners leading it. Second place is Bradley Smith. Third place is Jesus Fuster. Fourth, Marco Cencetti. Fifth is Tristan Vidas. And sixth is James Littlejohn. Well, what a finale we have in prospect. And, well, it's a pretty big ask of Tom Jordan, one would suggest, to hold off Bradley Smith for 20 minutes. He almost did it in Monza, though.
Yeah, and I said another fantastic example of the Radical Racing ladder. Again, Tom's developed supremely this year in his inaugural season of competition in the Radical European Masters with an SR8. Again, former Clubman's Cup and an SR3 Challenge racer, and under the tutelage of Alex, he's done a fantastic job and become a very quick and supremely consistent racer in a very short pace of time.
And he's keeping at bay the car of Bradley Smith, as there's a replay of James Littlejohn snatching 6th position from Manhal Alos. And he did make that stick as Henk Toys takes
big excursion there from Henk.
Well saved, as there's a changed lead. So Bradley Smith moves ahead of Tom Jordan, takes the lead of the race. So Smith out front. Well, this is going to be absolutely fascinating, because Tristan Vidas is 11 seconds back from Tom Jordan. We have a look at the move from Bradley Smith, and Tom, I think, slightly cognizant of the fact that he did not want to be known as the man that denied Bradley Smith the title by turning across his bows, didn't overly robustly defend that as out of the final turn. So here comes Bradley Smith across the line. He leads the way at the end of 18 laps, 1.2 seconds clear of Tom Jordan. In 3rd place it's Jesus Fuster, 4th Marco Cenchetti. And where is Tristan Vidas? Vidas is in 5th, and he is still 9 seconds back from Tom Jordan. So 3 cars and the best part of 9 seconds for Tristan Vidas to gain in order to finish in 2nd place and really keep himself in the championship fight going into this afternoon's decider.
Yeah, so he's just managed to make clearance of Shahin Nouri there, who of course is battling within the Supersport contention. So that's 1 car less that he has to worry about. But no, he's really got his work cut out to make some progress here. This is going to be an interesting period, and he needs to really make an impact now on those lap times.
Certainly does, as Cenchetti all over the tail of Jesus Fuster, and Cenchetti needs to make this move sooner rather than later, because you can see how much Cenchetti's been delayed behind Fuster, and he goes for the pass to the inside at turn 7. Fantastic manoeuvre that from Marco Cenchetti to demote Jesus Fuster. And now Cenchetti is released and off into pursuit of Tom Jordan. So we've got 15 minutes to go. We've got the leading quintet separated by 10 seconds. Another look at that pass. Really brave stuff from Cenchetti. And I suspect that the team on the pit board via the radio had said to him, you are at a real risk from being overhauled by Tristan Vidas. You need to get a move on, Marco. And speak of Vidas, there he is, homing in onto the tail of Jesus Fuster.
Yes, and there's no guarantee, of course, given the robust defence that Fuster's managed to put up to Cenchetti, that this is going to be any easier for Vidas. So, although his obvious pace is quite clearly faster, and he's just about caught him at the right place on the circuit now. If he can get a good slipstream, looks to be just a little bit too far away, perhaps.
I think you're right, and every lap where Vidas is not gaining time or places is a real disaster for Tristan, because 5th position is only going to net him 9 points versus the 20 that are going in the direction, in fact the 21 that are currently poised to go in the direction of Bradley Smith, because Bradley's also got the fastest lap to his credit.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this is it's rapidly going awry for the young Estonian, and of course great success in French Formula 4 and burst onto the radical scene this time last year here at Barcelona.
It's nice to have an Estonian driver challenging for championships whose surname isn't Asma, because Mark Asma, former British Formula 3 champion, as to the inside at turn 5. Vidas makes the move, finds the space the inside of Jesus Fuster. That's 1 more point in favour of Tristan Vidas. The question is now whether or not he can overhaul Cenchetti and Jordan. I suspect with the time remaining he should, because he's 7 seconds back from Tom Jordan, be able to catch and pass Tom. I think Marco Cenchetti is going to be an entirely different kettle of fish. And that is going to be the real challenge. So we have a look at Cenchetti just locking up the brakes into the final chicane on the lap. And Marco in pursuit of Jordan. He's got at the moment on track as well the car of Andy Cummings that he needs to put the lap. Aha. So in terms of the points matrix, in fact, so we're looking at 8 points then for Tristan Vidas playing 21 for Bradley Smith. With Vidas in 4th. In the Supersport class, by the way, it's Alvaro Fontes who leads it from Andy Cummings and Shaheen Nouri. But if that stays as it is, that's going to be enough to give Andy Cummings the Supersport crown.
Yes, by by 2 points. Obviously, then it'll depending on her fastest lap. But yes, he should still win the championship by a single point. But wouldn't that be a finale?
Well, for Cummings, as long as he finishes ahead of Nouri, that's really all he needs to do. That is how it is looking at the moment. Alvaro Fontes, would go up to 95 points. Not sure who's setting the fastest lap in the Supersport class at the moment.
Although, as we saw from yesterday's race, that's easier said than done. Of course, Cummings unfortunately having to retire in the late stages of the race after contact with Roger Bromley.
So there is Ross Kaiser. He's currently tucked in behind Manhal Alos as they dispute 7th and 8th place. Kaiser looking to the inside of Alos. Alos closes the door. Meanwhile, the race leader Bradley Smith is already across the line. He's completed 20 laps. He's 6.4 seconds clear of Tom Jordan. Tom is good 6 seconds ahead of Cenchetti. Cenchetti is slow and has been caught by Tristan Vidas. So Tristan Vidas is right on the tail of Marco Cenchetti in the same way that Ross Kaiser is right on the tail of Manhal Alos. They're about to pick their way past Roger Bromley. Now that is interesting. Ross Kaiser clearly doesn't have the confidence on the brakes. He really tried to assert his way through as Jaap Bartels, for the second race in succession, has a little bit of excursion through the final turn. And now Ross Kaiser puts the lap onto Roger Bromley. Front of the field, though, the car of Tristan Vidas is up behind Cenchetti, but seems to be sort of in that no man's land, about 8 or so tenths adrift. There is Alex Mortimer having a reasonably muted stint. That car's just not looked to be quite to Mortimer and Hyman's liking all weekend.
Yeah, the team have been struggling with setup a little bit all weekend and not quite found that perfect sort of sweet spot. But no, it's been a challenging year. It's been a bit of chopping and changing as Alex has been able to do sort of all of the rounds this year. But no, they're a great pro-am pairing, and really look forward to seeing them again out in 2015.
Well, that is what we're hoping for, is that many of these driver pairings will stay together into next season, and that we'll get some new competitors coming into the Radical European Masters. There is Tom Jordan. There is the battle behind Cenchetti and Vidas. And the pace of Cenchetti and Vidas last time around was, in the case of Vidas, a second quicker than Tom Jordan. So 9 minutes to go. They're all closing up, but Tom is doing a fantastic job at the moment in second position. He is just managing that gap pretty nicely. He was only 2 tenths slower than Marco Cenchetti last time through, and Tristan Vidas is just presently struggling to fight his way through the turbulent air behind Cenchetti. We can see now Vidas up behind Cenchetti as they head through the final turn. Got 9 minutes remaining, so there's probably going to be time for 5 laps or thereabouts. Really depends on Bradley Smith's track position as the gap between Cenchetti and Vidas widens.
Yes, I wouldn't call it comfortable. Certainly there's a stable lead by Jordan there of 4.5 seconds on the last lap. So, at the moment, Cenchetti isn't making enough progress, and obviously he's having to watch his mirrors and defend from Vidas. That, this is going to make life extremely difficult, because if this pair are fighting position, all the while the gap isn't diminishing to the lead duo.
This is immensely frustrating for Tristan Vidas as well, because he can really feel the championship not slipping between his fingers. Then what for Tristan Vidas this result would do is take matters out of his own hands for the final race.
Yeah, certainly it's swinging towards Bradley's favour, isn't it? Because you then start having to rely on drivers finishing lower than a certain position. So this is less than ideal for him.
So at the moment, Tristan Vidas in 4th place. He is en route towards 8 points. Bradley Smith is en route to 21 points. And we've got a stop and go penalty for car 14 and that is Roger Bromley for a pit infringement. So disappointment there for Roger. He will have to come in, and that is going to, unfortunately, well, he wasn't in contention for a podium anyway, but it's going to drop him towards the back of the Supersport battle. It's around the line, around the final turn we come, across the start and finish line. This then completes 23 laps, and the gap between Cenchetti and Vidas is no closer than it was last time through. And there is the 2030 Radical European Masters champion taking all the action and the tips as...
Yeah, once again, that's another lap frustrated, and the clock's ticking down. Just 6.5 minutes remaining in this race.
Well, Tristan Vidas, though, continuing the grand tradition of Estonian motor racing, because Estonia during the Soviet Union era was the real hotbed of Soviet motorsport. And Marko Asma's father was the Formula Easter champion, which was the Soviet Union's version of Formula One, on multiple occasions through the 70s and 80s. And then, of course, Marko going on to be British Formula 3 champion, 2006 if memory serves correctly. And Tristan Vidas following on those wheel tracks. Outside of our country box window, Roger Bromley taking a slightly unconventional approach to the stop and go penalty.
Yeah, I think it was a clean stop and go, and then he stalled us on the restart, which is obviously going to drop him quite a long way down, and unfortunately probably out of contention there as well for the Supersport class victory, which he originally was in contention for going into this final round.
It's Marco Cenchetti. He's not really defending from Tristan Vidas, but we've got to give all credit here to Tom Jordan, who is consistently lapping in the high 1 minute 48 second bracket. And so Tom driving supremely well once more. So I have to say, I did think that the combined force of Cenchetti and Vidas would see that gap closing down, but it's not the case.
No, not at all. And again, that's another lap. It's for the last 3 or 4 laps that stayed pretty consistently at sort of the 4.5 second mark. But Jordan now in turn a good 10 seconds behind Bradley, who's at the moment been able to cruise to victory.
Meanwhile, Jesus Fuster has been caught by James Littlejohn. This is the battle for 5th and 6th position, and Fuster looking a little bit flustered through that final chicane. James Littlejohn has a superb run coming off the start and finish straight. I'd be surprised if they plunge downhill in towards turn 1 if Littlejohn doesn't burst from the bubble and look to challenge to the inside line. He's leaving it as late as he dares and now goes for it. Finds the space. Can he get the car stopped in time? Yes, he can. Doesn't run out of road. And that is the position up into 5th for Littlejohn. And yes, he and Tony Wells, well, their pit stop was as quick as we thought it would be to the nearest second. So I think it was just an in-lap for Tony that possibly cost them some track position. As sliding on his way, Jesus Fuster. He'll be hoping not to have the bad luck that befell him in the later stages of yesterday's race.
Yeah, as the light was fading yesterday in quite a sort of late afternoon race yesterday into the dust time, and came around on the final lap to find, unfortunately, that Manhal Alos, following his contact with Alex Morter, was stranded in the middle of the circuit. And just as Manhal started to move away, unfortunately, it was right into the path of Jesus.
Well, much as you allude to the dusk, it was the 2 brightest coloured cars in the race that found a way to entangle as into the pit lane. Unfortunately for Christian Kronegard, that is from 13th.
I think we just see him.
He may.
Yeah, possibly a mechanical problem there, causing some handling issues.
Yeah, or it might just be a concern that with that trip through the gravel trap and the fact he's out of the points, he may have ingested a stone or something, and absolutely no benefit in risking the car. As Tristan Vidas, well, he's going to have probably 2 more attempts to try and earn himself another 3 points. And he really, if he can, as he has a big lock up into turn 1, needs to find a way past Marco Cenchetti, because to anticipate Bradley Smith finishing 4th in the last race of the season is a big ask. 3rd place, given the pace that we have seen from Littlejohn, Capadia, Tom Jordan, Marco Cenchetti might be on the cards.
Certainly not once you count in the success seconds that will be added from today, this morning's race finish. So yeah, yeah, he needs every point he possibly can at the moment, and this really isn't helping the situation.
What it does help, though, is his success seconds position. So, at least in terms of an eye towards a victory later on, it serves his cause. But he really has been struggling, not just to pass Marco Cianciatti, but actually get himself into a position where he can really challenge for the overtaking manoeuvre.
Yes, yeah, that's right. As you say, it's not so much the case that Cianciatti's had to defend. He's just maintained a good pace, and it looks like it's just been a little bit too hot for Vidas to be able to match.
So now he's tucked in behind Brian Caldwell as well. Looks to put the lap on Caldwell. She does. Heads downhill.
Yeah, so absolutely, this is going to go down to the wire, and Cianciatti, now just 3 seconds adrift from Jordan. The gap's closed a little bit, but no, it's not going to be enough to catch him in the final lap. Certainly not.
Though I think slightly alarmingly, possibly for fans of Tom Jordan, he's had two brilliant. Unfortunately for Tom Jordan, he's had two not brilliant laps, because he did a 1 minute 49.5 last time around. He did a 1 minute 49.5 the lap before, and if he was in the high of 1 minute 48, then he'd be matching the pace of Cianciatti. So it's not all done and dusted. Meanwhile, Bradley Smith is once more approaching Roger Bromley, who has recovered from the stop-and-go penalty drama. In terms of the Supersport class, right, Abacus is to the ready, because Andy Cummings has been passed by Shaheen Nouri, and Andy Cummings potentially could be passed by Nikolai Griazin between now and the checkered flag.
Yeah, that's right. So currently it looks like Fontes is going to take the class win, then Nouri, then Cummings, if Griazin doesn't get over the line before him.
Last time around, Nikolai Griazin was 4 seconds quicker. So Bradley Smith takes the checkered flag and the lead of the Radical European Masters Championship with 1 race to go. Runner-up is going to be Tom Jordan and Alex Capadia. Super drive from the pair of them. Third to Marco Cianciatti, and fourth, disappointingly so, for Tristan Vidas. And Bradley Smith will be absolutely overjoyed with that performance, because he has managed the race to perfection. But we have got plenty of other elements of interest, not least how the Supersport Championship is going to be determined. What we don't have visibility of, unfortunately, however, is who is setting the fastest lap in the Supersport class, although I'd be astonished if it wasn't Bradley Ellis.
Yes, yeah, so, although we had one race yesterday when Nouri set the fastest lap, so it's not impossible.
That when Ellis didn't get past the first corner?
That's true, yes, yeah.
So, we have got a fascinating finale to the championship to look forward to. Alvaro Fontes and Tony Forney have won the Supersport class from Shaheen Nouri, and Andy Cummings does enough to claim third position for himself and Bradley Ellis, and that is enough to give Andy Cummings the 2014 Radical European Masters Supersport Championship by 2 points, we reckon. So that is nice and close, which is the way we want it. So Andy Cummings, the 2014 Radical European Masters Supersport champion. Congratulations to Andy. As Bradley Smith, he is not yet confirmed as the Masters champion, but he has done exactly what he needs to do. Gentleman set, pole position, fastest lap, and the race victory. And more importantly for him, his principal championship rival, Tristan Vidas, off the rostrum by dint of 2 superb performances from Capadia and Jordan. Not bad going from 25th on the grid to 2nd place. Marco Cianciatti into 3rd, Vidas in 4th, Tony Wells and James Littlejohn in 5th, from Jesus Fuster and Konstantin Kalko, Manhal Alos in 7th, then Teres Woodward and Ross Kaiser. Chris Hyman and Alex Mortimer in 9th. James Abbott into 10th from John Harrison and Jack Bartels. And Ozzy Youssef and Gavin Kershaw, Hank Toyce in 14th. So Alvaro Fontes and Tony Fournet winning the Supersport class in 16th from Shaheen Nouri. And then Andy Cummings and Bradley Ellis with Akinyaizov and Griazin in 19th, ahead of Sean Gandar. Just the one retirement, which was that spin for Andrew Ferguson. So a thoroughly entertaining race. Plenty of drama and points of intrigue to discuss. So the fast lap in Supersport class did go the way of Bradley Ellis, which means the point goes to Andy Cummings, being co-driver. So that is confirmed for Andy Cummings as the Supersport champion. Well, Bradley Smith receives the congratulations of the team. And he has done exactly what he needs to do. A really fine performance from Bradley. Not quite leading from lights to flag. He had a couple of cars that he needed to overhaul. Meanwhile, runner-up Tom Jordan, another superb performance from Tom. He's now finding the consistency of being able to run at a high speed at the front of the field, and that is exactly what he has done. Once more, and third to Marco Cenchetti. Well, don't forget to join us later on today on Radical TV for the season deciding race. It gets underway at 15:25 Central European time. So obviously an hour before that if you're watching us in the UK or on GMT. And what a conclusion to the season we're looking forward to. For now though, the drivers debriefing in Parc Fermé, then they will be up onto the rostrum for their first podium of the day. And this is really, Will, exactly the sort of race we were hoping for.
Yeah, absolutely, and as you say, it's ultimately it's come down with that fastest lap point as well, to just 3 points at the end in the Supersports class. So a fantastically close battle, and Bradley Smith at the front end has done exactly what he needed to do, all that he could do this morning to give himself the best chances. As we see a replay of the start there, and again a fantastically close start, all those 8 streaming in, and brief lock up by Woodward just caused a rotation of Kronegard.
Yeah, so look back then at some of the key talking points of the race, including this super passing manoeuvre from Marco Cenchetti to the inside of Chris Hyman, as Cenchetti made progress early on, as did Alex Kapadia. Meanwhile, the recovering Christian Kronengaard unfortunately made contact with Rustam Akinyaizov. Bartels, the driver in the thick of the action, as he and Alain Costa did battle. Well, after the pit stops, Bradley Smith emerged behind Jesus Fuster, but it didn't take him too long to pick his way past Fuster, as James Littlejohn also aimed to gain ground. That was a brave move inside Manhal Alos, but eventually Littlejohn was able to consolidate en route to an eventual 5th place. Well, Tom Jordan was also out in front of Bradley after the pit stops, but he was passed in fairly short order as one of the drivers of the race came from Marco Cenchetti, scything through the field en route to an eventual 3rd place. Tristan Vidas did what he could, but with an additional 30 seconds of pit time after his successes in the first 2 races of the weekend, there was plenty for him to overcome. So it was another victory in the 2014 season for Bradley Smith, and it was a win. It's given him the championship lead with just 1 race to go. Fine drive to finish in 2nd place from Alex Kapadia and Tom Jordan. 3rd going the way of Marco Cenchetti. Slightly disappointed 4th for Tristan Vidas, and that means that going to this afternoon's race, deciding race for the season, that Bradley Smith has got an 11-point advantage over Tristan Vidas in the standings, and that is advantage Bradley Smith, one would suggest. So once more, it's a glorious autumnal day here at the circuit to Barcelona, Catalunya, as large crowd have gathered to watch the season finale for the Radical European Masters, amongst others, on a packed day of racing here, as onto the podium in 3rd place for Marco Cenchetti, 2nd place Tom Jordan and Alex Kapadia, and our race winner Bradley Smith. So up onto the top step of the rostrum for Bradley Smith. Celebration time for the MECTEC team. British National Anthem in honour of Bradley Smith, as we'll shortly move on to the presentation of the trophies from Mandrabat. So 3rd place for Marco Cencetti in the full distance single-handedly, and with great success. Our runners-up, Tom Jordan, Alex Capadia. Really great drive from both of them. And then our race winner, Bradley Smith. For Bradley, the day is only half done. All of his and everybody else's engine effort will be concentrated at 3:25 Central European time this afternoon, when we'll have the season finale for the Radical European Masters. But now, as the champagne is about to fly on the podium, it's time for Will Brown and myself, Ben Evans, to say thank you for your company, and we'll see you later on this afternoon.